The At Your Insta podcast is brought to you by Comictown. Check them out at www.comictown.net or search for Comictown Gaming Center on Facebook. Hello, and welcome to At Your Instep. My name is Morgan, and I'm here with Mike.
Hello.
And just Mike. No Dave.
Hello.
No Dave on this week's episode. We are all adults with many important things to do, and unfortunately, sometimes scheduling conflicts do arise. So it's just one of those days. So we didn't want to miss out talking about like the invitational and things like that.
But not one of those Daves.
No, not one of those Daves. Unfortunately, one of those Daves not here. Yeah, one of these Daves, not like the other. One of these Daves is missing. But we're still going to be fun. I mean, to be fair, we're the two, fun portions of At Your Instep.
Yeah, it's true.
Dave's the serious, like wise sensei portion of At Your Instep. He's like what keeps us grounded. He's like to the splinter to our Michelangelo, and there's no other fun one. I'm sorry, like Raphael.
Okay, well, first off, I've never heard him called Raphael. It's
Raphael.
It's Raphael. Well, I mean, dear Lord, you monster.
Raph.
But Raph. Yeah, I think I always kind of view myself as a Raph. I don't know if you know this, but I like anti-heroes.
yeah, anti-heroes are pretty cool.
They are the coolest.
Yeah, for sure. Because like they're like the kid in the leather jacket that smokes cigarettes, but it sounds like a heart of gold. Like that's just like an appealing archetype.
They're super aloof, but they care.
Oh yeah, like it's like they're the people that you always want to show up in like the midpoint of the movie to like save the day, and like the middle like action scene where things are like slipping away and like they show up and then they're like just in the nick of the time to like keep the plot going so like the good guys don't die.
I mean, think about it. You watched the original Power Rangers. No one liked the Red Ranger. He was the leader, supposedly. Who'd you like?
Tommy.
Who was that Green Ranger?
Yes.
The guy who was a villain and then became the Sweet Ranger with his own Megazord. Let's think about that.
He had two, technically.
Yeah,
he had the Dragon Zord, and then he had the
That's what I'm saying. Like he had a Zord like everyone else had a Zord, and then they had to combine to make a Megazord. And he was so cool. He got his own leather jacket wearing Dragon Megazord.
Yeah, basically.
And then his Megazord could consume the other one to become an even big. What I'm trying to tell you here is that anti-heroes are the best.
That's true.
And I'm Raphael.
Fair enough. I'll be Michelangelo. I'll be the party dude. I'm in reality though. I'm Donatello. I know that
because you do machines.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh man.
Just like how I'm in the Harry Potter housing. I'm a Hufflepuff, so I'm like real nice. I'm real nice that I do machines. I will help you move and fix your computer.
Oh, gosh,
I'm everyone's person who they want to be their neighbor. But yeah, we still have a few things to touch on as far as like the community topics are concerned, but not a whole lot. We did, of course, get like the rest of conspiracy, but there's only a couple things we really need to talk about, and then like talking about something that is definitely absent from conspiracy,
conspicuously not present.
Correct. But of course, we had the invitation over the weekend, so that's going to be the bulk, and then we have Indy coming up this weekend, which we're not going to, but definitely we'll have impacts of what happened at the invitational kind of show up. More than likely, I would think. So let's go ahead and jump into the community topics. So over the weekend, and I guess maybe today was like the first time where we got the complete spoiler, but there were like drafts that were like special, like shops got to do like preview drafts from it, and they were streamed and everything like that. So we got like a good majority of the cards over the weekend, and then all of them today. But these two spoilers happened before we got the full spoiler, which were Show and Tell being printed at Mythic, and then Berserk being printed at Mythic. Now, this is pretty awesome because this is like Berserk. This is like the first foiling past the
from the vaults,
which is obviously terrible foiling, and no one really wants that.
And people like this art, like they really do like this.
Yeah, art. I mean, to be fair, if you look at the original art for Berserk, no one likes that guy. no one likes crazy. I don't know. You can't say Crazy Steve because we already have a character named Steve. You want to say Crazy Dave, but that's offensive to the Dave that's not here.
Well, he can't argue with it, so it's Crazy Dave.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that guy definitely got like a hornet sting, and then he got got angry.
He got all squirrely eyed and didn't like it. No one likes it.
And then show and tell, which is one so awesome for a set like this. You play 4-player games, so you literally don't know what's going to happen with show and tell. Like that,
It might be real bad.
it's going to be a sweet card to cast in the format, and then also just like a good value print to get because to get people to buy the set, and also as opposed to like Eternal Masters, this is a set that is in print as long as people keep buying it.
Yeah.
You can still buy boxes of Conspiracy 1 for box price.
Yeah.
So this is definitely going to help the price on show and tell, and kudos to Wizards. While there's still some issues with the mana bases in Legacy, there are now a couple decks that really are a little bit more affordable.
Yeah,
and
you brought up like Omnitel, being that you don't, it's a blue deck. You don't necessarily play any other colors, and like theoretically, Sneak and Show. I mean, we just had a printing of Sneak Attack, which did help that price a little bit from Eternal Masters. So
I mean, if you held on to your Sneak Attacks, you may have opened in your forces. And then now you have, I mean, obviously Volks are the issue, and they're going to continue to be the issue. But, the cards are there.
just play with Steam Vents. It's fine. There's like no difference.
In that deck, like, you're trying to win with an Emrakul, so maybe it isn't. I don't know.
you could probably sneak by with that.
Just play like City of Brass. Don't even fetch for it.
Yeah, who cares? Like, whatever.
Undiscovered Paradise.
Yeah. But yeah, I think these are fairly exciting. And then I know that for like BattleBox, there are some like cards that I'm very happy are getting printed again, so I can like actually get like Deceive Exarch, which is still, I don't know, I haven't checked the foiling price on that, but I don't imagine it's like nothing. So I'm pretty excited that is actually getting a reprint, that I get the foil copy of, because I don't have that yet for BattleBox.
I'm putting Sun Double in my BattleBox.
That sounds tempting.
That
That
card
art's
is sweet.
Awesome.
The art is awesome. The card, if you don't know Stunt Double, it's clone, so it's 3 generic and a blue for a clone, but it has flash.
Yeah.
And the flavor on that is it's remarkable.
It's just like that you literally like cut and then you like put in the Stunt Double and then keep rolling.
What?
But I hate you. And like Inquisition, I don't know what the where that's actually going to settle as far as foiling price, but anything will help.
And a Serum Visions with original art, if you wanted it, that's a little cheaper.
Yeah.
I've not put I preordained in there, so I've never really cared for Serum. But you could,
you're like,
if you want to.
If you have the best, why consider the rest?
Wow.
But yeah, I think like overall, when we see like the entire picture of Conspiracy 2, I think it's pretty sweet. It makes me sad that Dave does not want to put any of the special draft cards into the set, even though there are some very good like common and uncommon ones. And they work, they are different than what they were in the original Conspiracy, because you have creatures like, you draft this face up, and then you can take a creature during the draft and like take it out of the draft. And this is not a card that you've drafted. This is just a card that you have removed from the draft in sacrifice of your own draft pick. And then if it has flying, then this creature gains flying, and so on and so forth, like first strike and haste and all this stuff. And it's like, that's a really cool thing that you can do, because like it allows you to power up a creature that is pretty awesome in your deck, and then kind of hate draft like effectively, which is kind of interesting to think about and consider. But apparently we tried these special draft cards in Conspiracy and Dave's Cube once, and it wasn't fun. So
I don't know if you noticed this.
Never again.
We disagree with Dave, and he can't defend himself here. So
this is the Indefensible Dave podcast.
Tweeted Dave hashtag Conspiracy in the Cube.
Yeah. This is actually a conspiracy to get Conspiracy to the Cube. It's very flavorful. Because we are the two more, flavorful people.
Yeah, he's
for
the Cube monarch, and we're tired of being subjugated.
Yeah, exactly. We want to deal combat damage to him so we can be the monarchs. Well, we can't. We would have to figure that one out, because we can't both be the monarch.
I'll punch Dave.
Okay, that's fine. I'll defer to you. But yeah, I hope like there will be release events hopefully in local stores, and we'll be able to like jump into like a pod and actually get that flavor at least once or twice, and I think it'll be fun, and we'll see how it goes. And I imagine like at the upcoming GPs, like they'll have events for Conspiracy Draft, because I mean, with the set being as valuable it is, I imagine people are desiring to do it. So.
Yeah, I would hope so.
So maybe at Louisville we'll see it and have a good time. So the next sort of discussion that we want to have is pretty much about a card that isn't in Conspiracy, and it's Damnation. Now, we do have Hollow Burial as sort of a sweeper, so there is something that exists that fits that hole in the set. But there were so many good hits that we were getting from Conspiracy. It seemed like, well, maybe this is the opportunity. Maybe this is the time that we see it and get it. And it's not there. The Black Mythic in the set is Avatar of Woe, and as much of a Joey Lawrence fan I am, I just don't care. So people were naturally disappointed, and Mark Rosewater has the Blog Talk, which is a forum that he uses to answer questions that people kind of throw at him on a daily basis. And I imagine going through this is quite tiresome, but there have been very many people that have consistently asked about Damnation reprints. Even back to, we were looking in like 2012, people were asking about the reprinting of Damnation. So needless to say, the man knows about it.
Yeah. So he says things like, due to factors I can't expand on, it's a tricky card to include in most sets. Now, that statement itself doesn't make a lot of sense, because we know some of those things that he can't expand upon. Like, they've tried to move away from 4-mana Wraths and Standard. I get it. It breaks the color pie. I get it. But it is just weird. Like, not only do we have 2 Modern Master sets, not only do we have an Eternal Master set, not only had 2 Conspiracy sets, but we literally had a From the Vault called Annihilation that was all Wrath effects.
Yeah, I mean, like, is Damnation good at, like, annihilating things?
I mean, Wrath of God's in that set, so I'd assume that the color-shifted version would also be just as good at getting it done.
But, Mike, that's more flavorful, because it's Wrath of God, and we could put a Theros God on it.
Well, so here's the thing that's interesting. I do wonder if that's really, and this is conjecture, but I do wonder if that is really one of the issues. Wrath of God, they haven't reprinted since what? Ninth edition? I'm trying to think, was that the last printing?
Yeah.
Up until that, and then they were able to stick a Theros God on it and take away the religious element of it. And I wonder if they're afraid that they can't get away from that with Damnation, so they don't want to do it again. Now, I don't know.
I mean,
they brought demons back. They've been okay with that kind of thing. But I do wonder if that's one of those things.
I mean, you could make the argument you just stick a picture of Erebos on Damnation and roll with it as well.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And maybe that's it then. Theros 2, Damnation confirmed.
Yeah, we did it. We cracked the code.
But I do think, based on how they're printing standard sets and how adamant they've been that we don't want 4-mana Wraths, we haven't had what's its Supreme Verdict. I mean, we've had Languish, we've had Mutilate, but these are not overall catch-alls. So I understand it's not coming for standard, but you just printed so many sets in 1 year that it could have been in, and then there's like, when the time comes, and at some point, like, you're asking for more patience than you're due. But they can do whatever they want. It just seems weird.
Yeah, and he basically says that we when we look at sets, we don't ask, can we put Damnation in this? It's, we want to make the sets the best that they can be. And
in the army?
Yeah. Yeah, we want to make the sets the best, the best sets they can be, and you don't get that way by, using, like, starting off with that question. I can understand that, but, man, it just, seems to fly in the face of what players are really, like, hurting for. Not just, like, you can't even be like, well, Modern. I mean, Modern is a factor, but like that's not even the most desirable place for Damnation in all actuality. I mean, it's people that play casual, that people play kitchen table Magic that don't want to spend $60.
Commander.
Yeah, and like Commander, and like these are people that are very serious about these what we consider casual formats, and I think that they are the biggest people that are kind of crying for this now. That's kind of the interesting thing too, because I did see someone say on Twitter that like even if you were to ask like the top 20 cards that need to be reprinted for Modern, like Damnation probably wouldn't even make that list.
I think that was Saffron Olive, and who cares? That like we're talking about Conspiracy 2 right now. You know what I mean? Like, it just seems, and to your point there were multiple copies of Damnation in the top 8 of the Invitational. So
that's very true. That's very true, and I think it's becoming more of a popular card, especially when we actually start to talk about some of the lists that did very well the Invitational. Like Damnation's a very good card that you might want to have access to if you play that color. It just like I'm tired of this excuse, and it feels like an excuse, and I understand like you want to make the sets the best that they can be, but like when you take a look at Conspiracy, and like Mike, how many times have you drafted Conspiracy?
I think 4 or 5 times.
I drafted like once or twice. at most, from what I can even remember.
I did, I think, 2 on the release weekend, and then we did 2 between friends.
Yes,
And I think
those are the 2 that I did.
And I did 1 at an event. I think there was like a side event.
Gotcha.
So
how many experiences would you be quote unquote ruining by printing like a Damnation, or how does this not fit in the set? It's like it's very minimal, and like if you're going to print a set like Conspiracy, why not push it a little? Why not? And like not saying that they have
we just did talk about Show and Tell and Berserk.
I mean, I'm not saying that they haven't, but it's like you're already doing this. You're already printing Berserk. You're already printing Show and Tell. Like, just do it. Like, just pull the trigger. Like, it's
just do it.
It doesn't make sense to me, and maybe it's not supposed to make sense to me.
Yeah, it's due to factors he can't explain.
So,
and you're a mere mortal.
I wish they could be explained to me. I wish they could just be like, well, we don't want to tank the secondary market on Damnation, and like. That is like a very, very like volatile sort of response, and I'm just kind of
I think you're just upset about this because you want a foil 1 for BattleBox.
I just need it so bad, Mike. I just need it so bad. But anyway, like it's just like I feel like it's ridiculous, and maybe we'll and it's not even something we're asking for standard. Like I think that Mike and I can at least agree that Damnation is definitely would be like too powerful for where they're taking standard, and that's fine. And we've accepted that. I think as an entire player base, but you can only do so many of these secondary sets every year. Like, you got to find room for it somewhere. And if you're going to wait 14 years to print Damnation again, then that's ridiculous. It's not. It's a Wrath. It's a 4-mana Wrath that with creatures can't even regenerate, which no one even focuses on anymore. So figure it out. It's not that hard. Anyway, that's it for the community segment. So we're going to go ahead and move on to competitive, but before that, we did want to, of course, give a shout out to our sponsor, Comic Town, a lovely store, and they're actually having a Team Trios event on Saturday, September 3rd, and this is going to be a Classic Series event, which you can get queued for the the Invitational, for lack of a better term, in December, correct?
Yeah, the Classic Series Championship,
yes, and the winning tween, the winning team,
the winning tween.
Yeah.
Yes, you must be between the ages of 13 and 19.
Correct. The winning.
Oh, wait, no,
team,
tweens aren't teenagers.
It's
are they?
11 to 13.
Oh man,
I think it's like 10 to 12, I guess.
Sorry, everyone.
I don't know.
Sorry, internet.
And I don't know what.
Sorry, believers.
They're all just. I don't understand the classification.
I don't understand tweens.
No, they're very. I don't understand kids. I don't understand anyone younger than the age of 25 most of the time. So
they just start sounding like they're like foaming in the mouth. Just like, how old are you? Oh, I'm 23.
Yeah, just indecipherable. To be fair, like it could actually just be indecipherable from the way like our English as you probably very intimate with the English language being so truncated as it is these days.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
But anyway, the winning team will get qualified for that championship. That's 3 people. That's pretty big. And it's going to be Eldritch Moon team unified seal basically.
Yeah, so you can prep for Louisville.
Yeah, and you'll get ready for that and get queued for an awesome tournament. And it's going to be for team registration actually very reasonable. So definitely check it out. And,
yeah, beyond reasonable, honestly.
Yeah, for what you get packs, you get actual like product, and when you actually take a look at some of the GP registrations for constructed events, you kind of bulk at that price.
Let me just suggest that the registration for this weekend's GP in Indianapolis is more expensive than the entry fee for the entire team the week after at Comic Town.
Yeah, so
for the entire team, and you'll say, but my prizes, well, I hate to tell you, only 64 out of the 1,500 people that are going are going to prize. Right. So maybe come play some Team C.
Yeah, you got better odds. To be fair.
Granted, you can't take first. Because the team of myself and Morgan and my wife will be in first.
I mean,
but every other slot is
Team Out Your It's going to crush. So I don't know what to tell you. But yeah, it'll be an awesome time, and again, that's going to be on September the 3rd. So let's move into competitive. So before we jump into the Invitational, Mike and I actually did go to a PPTQ at the Card Academy, which is a shop in Reynoldsburg, Ohio. Yes. So it's just to the east of
the city's
Columbus.
longest strip mall.
Yeah, driving down like Main Street in Reynoldsburg is just like a little shopping centers, one after another until the end. I don't know. It goes all the way that way until you hit the East
Until the
Coast.
sun sets.
Yeah, basically. We both top 8'd, which is pretty awesome. I mean, it was modern, so I was playing a deck that I had never played before, technically, and it was a lot of fun. So Mike actually gets to go first.
That is very correct. I was wondering when you would catch that. So close to 40 players. Mm-hmm. So a pretty good turnout for this PPTQ. So we played 6 rounds. I played Suicide Zoo. And I played close to Zadokai's list from the World Magic Cup qualifier. With the only difference, he played Goblin Guides and cut his step links because they're terrible. I played Gnarlwood Dryads, and they were great all day. Getting in key attacks and really making some key blocks that step links you're throwing it away, but Dryad you're just always getting parity. You're getting to kill it. And it just feels really good in a lot of boards. So, played again. I actually went undefeated in the Swiss, ending with a 4-0-2 record. Trying to think here. I beat Grixis. I beat Bantel Drazi. I beat. Trying to think of all the things I played against. I watched so many of your matches too that they started getting all fuzzy. I'll have to go back and look at my notes. I had this all written down. I won't bore you with this. I didn't lose a game until playing for seeding the last round, then opted to draw as we were going to game 3. Took the second seed in the top 8, had to play against Mantel Drazi again, which I had beaten in the Swiss, and sort of had some awkward draws. I kept the always fun no-lander game 1 on the play. With a bunch of cycling, hit my first land. Had a discard spell on turn 1 and a Death Shadow on turn 2, but I never drew another land and had lethal with a Become Immense for the entire game up until the second to last turn when he was able to take it with a Thought-Knot Seer, and then I drew my Windswept Heath. And I was like,
that's brutal.
Game 2, it was one of the nuttiest draws I've seen the entire tournament. And then Game 3 was just one of those awkward games in Modern. And honestly, Morgan kind of was a victim of this in his top 4 match, where your hand was okay, but it didn't really match up. Like, you had some sideboard cards, and they didn't match up well. Bantel Drowsy has Spellskite and a bunch of copies of Engineered Explosives. And Explosives is just a card that you just can't beat most of the time. So I kept a hand with Stony Silence, and he mulliganed on the play. And he ended up curving out with Hierarchs into a Displacer and a Reality Smasher, and saw 0 artifacts. So I took my entire turn 2 to play Stony Silence to not get blown out by explosives, and he just didn't draw any artifacts. So it was rough. I tried to make it close, but in that matchup you take so much damage. Obviously, that Reality Smashers they can just get you out of anywhere. So it was a tough end. Played 5 games against that opponent. It was a really interesting match. He definitely sideboarded differently in the top 8. He said, but it was it was fun. Frustrating under the tournament. Sucks to not drop any games and then not be able to get past top 8. But I had fun. But yeah, Morgan did get past top 8.
I did. So the deck that I actually played for the tournament was Eldrazi-tron, and well, this is a deck that I had seen was kind of, up and coming on the Magic Online circuit. Was 5-0ing some competitive Modern events, and then Todd Stevens actually wrote about the deck as being like a potential format defining deck, or at least like a dark horse candidate for a deck that could sweep a tournament. And I'm always down for that, and I have Tron pieces and everything like that, so the deck was pretty easy to put together, and most of the cards are standard legal. A lot of the ones that you're playing, I mean, you get to play 4 Endbringer in your deck, which, well, sign me up, why not, who cares? But your main, really the reason to play the deck is you are a deck that can take advantage of playing 4 main deck Chalice of the Voids, which is a very disruptive card, and can do some pretty dirty things to your opponent. So I actually started off the tournament with a loss, and I lost to Tyler Manty, who's a local a player who has gone to the Pro Tour, things like that. Been very, 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 very professional as far as that's concerned. So he's definitely like a competent player.
He was my other victories. I avenged Morgan. I forgot about that.
Yes, correct.
He was playing a cool Duran Abzan list.
Correct. Yes, which was very interesting. So I definitely played against the Siege Tower, and our games. I just was not paying attention to what I was doing at all, and was very distracted. Had not shaken off the morning drowsiness, as it were. So I definitely tightened up after that. Played against Mono Bluetron, which is pretty funny of a matchup, because you definitely just like pressure them, and they can't, like, he had Tron before me and everything like that, but Eldrazi Tron, like, you can get Tron, and that's good. Like, if you're doing that lane, you're probably doing some broken things, but you don't really care. You're just playing Thought-Knot Seers and Reality Smashers, and you're just like trying to curve out and really disrupt your opponent. So beat that, and then played against Merfolk. I know that, and you do have a lot of access to like removal spells in your between your main deck and your sideboard. You have All's Dust, which is really, really powerful against them. So you can do things like be under like some Spreading Seas and really disabling your lands, and then like get to 7 and All's Dust, and then you just have like infinite mana, and they have nothing. So
I use Ratchet Bomb in a similar capacity to get rid of a bunch of Spreading Seas.
Yes,
and
very, very
turn on your temples, and it was very good.
Ratchet Bomb's a really effective card out of the sideboard. It's sort of the catch-all card for your deck, where you're like, well, I don't know what you're going to be doing, but it's probably going to be easily like handled by Ratchet Bomb to some persuasion. Obviously, it's better if you draw them early rather than late, since you have to take up things. But again, Pithing Needle is also really good against them, because you can shut off things like my opponent on the played a turn 1 Mutavault, and I had the Pithing Needle, so I was just like, I'm just going to name this Mutavault, and that contributed to me being able to win the game. So, what else did I play against? I know I played against Affinity, but I know I played against, obviously, other decks beforehand. But I can't obviously remember them, unfortunately. But I will tell you about the Affinity matchup. So this is one of the gross reasons why playing Chalice of the Void gets you free games sometimes. So this is the round before I could draw, basically. I had one loss, and then just need one more win to be able to go X 1-1 and pretty much be locked for top 8. But I had to get through Affinity. I knew my opponent was on Affinity beforehand. I'd seen him, playing the deck basically before I got to him. So my opener has Chalice of the Void in, and I'm on the play. And I'm like, my opponent is mulliganing to 5 at this point in time, which Affinity can get out of mulligan to 5. It's a deck that you can mulligan with and be fine. So I'm going to keep my hand to 7, which is good. And he scries to the top off of his, and I was like, well, I could play this Chalice for 0 and just get him, just destroy him, potentially. But it could just be like guessing wrong. I need to set it for 1 to like stop some of his more powerful things that he can do. So I'm like, well, I think 1 probably gives me the most chance of devastation, pretty much. Playing it for 1 on turn 2 might be too slow, even gets to like a bolt of 5. So I was like, land, expedition map, Chalice for 0, and my opponent just concedes. Just concedes the game. He told me that he kept a no lander, but he kept 2 Memnites and then scried 1 to the top. So he was like, well, I'm just going to keep this, and then like, what's the worst that could happen? And then he found out what the worst thing is that could happen, and that is like. That was like, oh, so this is how Modern works for people. Like, this is what they talk about when you get free wins. Because I've never, done that. Basically, just been like played a card and never saw like my opponent never had a turn. Basically, so I was like, I played a round of Vintage. So that was sweet. But ended up, drawing with our buddy Hans, who was playing red black. Grizz Shoal brand. I guess that has green in his deck technically, but he ain't casting green. So, then actually got paired against him in the first round of the top 8. And our matches were a little lackluster. I definitely got...
Oh, it was top 4 you played against him.
No, it was top 8.
Oh.
Top 4 I played against my Affinity opponent again.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got it backwards. My apologies.
So yeah, top 8 played against Hans, and I get game 1, and that matchup is kind of scary for Tron. I definitely have the better version of Tron to be playing against a deck that main decks Blood Moon, because I can operate above a Blood Moon. I'm playing basic, I'm playing wastes in my deck, so I can still cast on my colorless creatures, and potentially can strip things out of his hand, and Thought-Knot Seer is pretty insane against them because it exiles things, and when they can't get something back, it's fairly brutal. And he gets to do his thing game 2, but then game 3 we sort of have a longer game. It was either game 1 or game 3 that we had a sort of a longer game, but I got to name a Chalice on 2, which is pretty powerful. They can't really function a lot of the times with that. But yeah, it was it was definitely something that I definitely had a better Tron deck for the matchup. I definitely think the matchup is not necessarily in my favor. Their deck is just faster than mine a lot of the times, and Chalices are kind of dead because you can't effectively name early stuff. You have to get to turn 4 theoretically, or turn 3 if you get natural Tron to name something effective against them. But your removal spells just aren't what are you gonna dismember a Grizzlebrand? Nah, don't work like that.
I mean, it only gets 2 lifelink.
That's very important. Theoretically, but most of the time it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's right.
Most of the time they're going to be gaining a bunch of life from Shoal and stuff like that. So, but in the semifinals to get paired against Affinity, against my opponent that I defeated to get into the top 8, and he got his revenge, to say the least. I did take it to a game 3, but just like Mike, my game 3 hand, it was decent, but it did not combat what he ended up being able to do that game, and didn't kind of match up. And I made a few mistakes that contributed to the overall loss. So it wasn't perfect play on my part, but I definitely endorse the deck. I think it's actually fairly sweet, and I think people aren't playing around Chalice, and they're not expecting to see it, and it's the only deck in Modern that can play 4 main deck of Chalice still, and just not be bothered by it and just get people.
As a Death Shadows player, I do not ever want to see a Chalice.
No.
It hurts my soul.
But yeah, I think it's pretty sweet, and I'd you can even build a sideboard to be competitive against Dredge. I was playing 4 Relic of Progenitus in my sideboard, and obviously you can play things like Grafdigger's Cage and everything, so it's pretty flexible, and you just get very powerful cards that you get to play with, and you're definitely attacking the format in a different way than people are used to, so I think that plays a lot to your advantage. I think you might be a dog in the Bant Eldrazi matchup, just a little bit. They have paths which are pretty difficult, but you can go over the top of them if you get to the late game. But they are faster than you in the early game because they have Noble Hierarchs. So that's kind of the give and take with that matchup. But I never actually played against it in the entire tournament, so I was glad to dodge that matchup. And I never played against Infect. I think Infect is probably pretty difficult. But you get to play main deck Ghost Quarters, which is pretty great, and you get a lot of sideboard. I was playing Gut Shots as well in my sideboard for Affinity, for Infect if it did show up. So, but never had to actually play against it. But yeah, that was my tournament, and it was pretty sweet. I hadn't performed very well in tournaments that we've gone to recently, so it was kind of nice to get a top 4, and I wish I could have got to the finals, but it just wasn't in the cards for me this time. But maybe next Modern PPTQ if there's one upcoming, but may not. We're pretty focused from here on forward for Louisville, so I think it's going to be where our focus is. But let's move into the Invitational. So we definitely want to talk about the top 8, everything like that, but we also know the invitationals are more than just the top 8 decks. It's a lot of times the 7-1 decks that we're going to be talking about. So we're going to be bouncing back and forth between both, and there is a lot of crossover still. So
I will say we're not going to talk about that many standard decks.
No, I mean
all the 7, like what was it, 15 out of 22 of the
it
best?
was 9 out of 15.
9 out of 15. Okay,
Of the 7-1 or better lists are Band Company.
Band Company.
So the deck's still good. I mean, you can take a look at sort of the Standard Classic, where Band Company is the majority of the list, but wasn't the winning list, so that's nice to see. And there are some different 7-1 lists that we will be talking about that are not Band Company. So
we're about a month away, folks.
yeah,
So-
it's coming. And in honesty, like, you don't even have to focus on Standard that much. You have Indy, which is Modern, and you have Louisville, which is Team Sealed. So it's like your focus on Standard is going to be what FNM deck am I going to play, or things like that, or if you're going to the opens and things like that. I don't know if there's any more Standard GPs, but there probably are. So if you're in the area, maybe, but who cares? So we do want to obviously announce that the winner was Liam Lonergan, who decimated the Modern portion of this tournament, was undefeated with his
11-0, including top 8.
which is disgusting. And he was playing elves. So I'm sure Riley's heart grew. Riley Curran, our friend, his heart grew 3 sizes that day.
Yeah, he definitely seemed to be an Elvish visionary.
Most certainly. And I mean, or an Elvish mystic, to be fair. There's some strong magics on his side. And
Well, I mean, he won. He's an Elvish champion.
that's very true. You got me there. But no, I mean, it really feels like he just picked a deck that he was just seemingly a master at, just decimated, just crushed. If you watch any of the games, like, it felt like nothing. It felt like he was just cleaning house, basically. I mean, he had a 3-0 victory against JD Comparens playing Jund in the finals. Like, it was just gross.
Yeah, and I think in as good as Patrick Sullivan and Cedric Phillips are, it was great to watch the top 8. I think everyone was sort of derisive of him and his march to the top 8, and sort of thought that Jund was going to clean house. They did the poll, like, who's going to win, and it was like almost 70% like voting for JD, and JD's awesome. Like, she's a great player. She's kicked my butt more than a few times.
Oh yeah, mine too.
And like, I've walked away from the match going, I don't know what I did wrong, but I got crushed.
At the Columbus Invitational, she was my last round opponent in Modern, and if I had beaten her, I would have gotten on the 7-1 list with Burn, and she cleaned my clock. I didn't deserve it.
Interestingly enough, too, I think like before, was it New Syracuse was the open? Was it last week or 2 weeks ago?
Something like that.
Before that, she hadn't played since the Invitational. The last one.
That's crazy. Yeah.
And then she just comes in here and takes second. So like, I think they all thought like she was just going to crush this, and maybe just to understand the matchup. Jund doesn't really have that many ways to catch up. Outside of like damnations or angers. He's got a lot of spot removal, but that Elves deck is disgusting.
Yeah, it flies in the face of like spot removal.
It really does.
You have to have a sweeper of some persuasion. To her credit, JD didn't have Anger the Gods in her sideboard, which is fairly effective depending on how many lords they have in play, but it's fairly effective at least in the early turns. And had targeted discard, which seemed to be really good at certain times, but man, it always seemed like
terrible after turn 3.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
because they just don't have a hand,
right?
But he drew out of it, played pretty skillfully in the entire tournament, and it really shows with his record. And it was really shocking to me to see like all of the commentators and the talking heads at the tournament be voting against him consistently. But it's like he had to have played against other Jund lists, other green black deck lists, taking a look at some of his other dredge lists, most certainly, and it feels like this deck is just faster than dredge, period. And just had to play against other types of those lists to be effective in this tournament, and for them just to be like not take that into consideration when I'm not sure if Michael Majors or JD had to play against an Elves list, or prepared for it. But Liam was certainly prepared for that matchup. So it's like, who do you really think is going to win that one? So, and I think a lot of their considerations when they say those things definitely goes into the player with the more known name,
and that's fair,
and then a more substantiated record with skill.
I mean, and again, to JD credit, she had a great run as well.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the one thing I really want to mention if we're going to look at this elves list, because it's fairly standard outside of one sort of divisive card, which lists sometimes have a bunch of, or sometimes move away from. But there's he's doing this in the full combo version with Uzuri. There's no Shaman of the Packs here, not even like the Misers. Like, he is all in on this plan, and I think that tells me more than anything like how well versed he is with the deck. Like, he doesn't need the out. You know what I mean? He doesn't want that line to even play to.
Yeah, and he's not the Curio, the Cloudstone Curio.
Yeah, he's not doing the Van Meter comboing off either. He's got a sweet sideboard full of awesome one-ups for his collect companies. Most of them come in under chords. We see some underutilized cards like Chameleon Colossus. Oh my gosh,
card sweet.
And and you get to play some great things like Fracturing Gust. But you get the sweet one-ups like Kataki and Malira, and even Essence Warden. Man, that card does some work.
Yeah, especially if you're playing against something like Burn or anything like that, any sort of aggressive list. That card will with the amount of creatures you're just spitting out, you're obviously going to invalidate a lot of people's decks. Now, I do mention Burn. Now, if we look at a lot of the 7-1 lists, there is a lot of Burn, and it obviously even top aided in the hands of Miles Rodriguez.
You almost said Morales. I know you did.
I wanted it to be true.
In the hands of Spider-Man.
He was even wearing a Spider-Man shirt or hoodie in his player profile picture, and I was like, I see you. I see you. Miles Rodriguez, who played Blue-Red Thermo Alchemist, he was just all Burn all the time. He's just
I believe his player profile said that Patrick Sullivan was his spirit
animal. And I appreciated that. I appreciated that sentiment, and he, definitely. He played it against Brad Nelson, who was playing Death Shadows in Modern. Man, definitely had some interesting things, and I feel like when you look at that matchup, that's a matchup where Brad Nelson's skill definitely took advantage, took over in that sort of matchup.
Yeah, and the commentary even said that I think Patrick Sullivan specifically said that he felt like when it was 2-2 that he would have been lost at 3-1 already. And I will say I've been on here adamantly saying that Burn is a bad match, a bad matchup for Zoo, like the Suicide Zoo deck. It still is definitely bad, but it's more interesting than I gave it credit for before. I just played it a number of times, and you could see watching those games the tension. Each game they even mentioned the games didn't go past turn 5 or 6 ever, but they went to 5 games and there was just so much tension each game.
Yeah, Brad Nelson got slow play warnings because of his rate of play. And
I think if he would have got one more, he lost, right?
Correct. He would have lost a game. Yeah, correct.
Which would have been the match
for sure. And it feels like that is how those matchups would have to go. I mean, it's a very good example of a push pull sort of situations where you have to think about so many different variables, and I would never want to be in that sort of situation at all whatsoever. It would just ruin me as a person.
Well, let's take a minute to look at these. There are 2 Death Shadows lists. One in the top 8, obviously piloted by Brad Nelson, but another 7-1 list piloted by Cameron Rowland.
Yeah.
Now we'll start with Brad's because if you've listened to our cast, if you've paid attention to this deck at all, the main deck here is pretty much the standard. Going all the way back to even playing Step Links, which I will say, if you watch that match, if you want to know why you should try Dryad if you're playing this deck over Links, watch the match him playing against JD and look at all the bad blocks he has to make with Step Links and how much extra damage he has to take to try and push damage through. And now imagine if every one of those blocks he made with the Links was made with a Dryad. And just and it's a 1-to-1 swap on those creatures. So just something to consider. I know it's one matchup, but it's a pretty important matchup in Modern right now. But he did adopt some of the things out of the sideboard, and the card I'm the biggest fan of is Ranger of Eos. Mattel Zadokai was really big on this card, and Dave was telling me about it, and I had done a little bit of testing with it, and I got to cast it a couple times on Saturday, and I was sitting at 5, and I cast Ranger of Eos, and I'm like, I'm going to get these 2 8/8s, and when I cast them next turn, they're going to be 10/10s. go. Yeah, and it was just, and that was my first round against the Mantel Drowsy opponent, and it was just the board presence was too much.
Yeah, it was gross. I gotta watch it happen. I was like, whoa, I don't want that to be. I don't want to be sitting across from that. That seems like a horrifying thing. So yeah,
but that's really where we want to start. Like, this is the original list with minor tweaks, and then Cameron Rowland was playing a version that was somewhere in between what Raptor was doing at the MOCS last week and what the original decks are doing. So here we see the deck that has no white, so playing Dryads, not playing Lynx, not playing Wild Nicottle, and playing Forge of Ulvenwald, and going so hard on Delirium that we're not playing Lightning Bolt, we're playing Tarfire. Which adds Tribal to the mix. And because of that, he's playing 2 Goyfs in the main. So, he figures if I'm going to try really hard to get Delirium, and that to me sounds like, that feels like the next true iteration of the deck. If you're playing the version that desperately wants Delirium, then you also want Tarmogoyf, because Tarmogoyf is probably still the best Delirium card ever printed.
Yeah. It's like Delirium Plus, where it's like, yeah, if you have more in your graveyard, that's great too, actually. And not just 4, just over 4.
And this list still finds room for at least 1 Become Immense, which is, I know, something that Dave and I both would have missed out of the original. It also cut the Elemental that gives haste, but kept the Gorklan Rampager. So, sideboard here is also a little bit different. Has a really sweet one in Shriekmaw. Also, Ingot Chewer, Fairy Macabre, and Melira. Again, this is a deck playing 4 Traverse in the main, so now he's playing a toolkit out of the sideboard. Now, this, as a person who's run this deck enough, feels way too cute to me. But in an Invitational, I don't know if I play this in every tournament, but in an Invitational, it doesn't hurt to have options.
Yeah.
And he went 7-1 with this list, so, now you could argue that he may have gone 7-1 because this deck is great. But we don't know what the breakdown, there could have been a lot of 6 and 2s and 5 and 3s, I don't really know. But it's interesting to me that 2 versions of the decks did so well. And these decks really are dissimilar. I had another player local who in one of the rounds I took a draw on Saturday who was playing the Raptor version and wanted to play test some matches. So we sat down and probably played 10 or 12 matches in that round, and they were some of the weirdest games of Magic I've ever played. He attacked me with an Arrowwood Dryad once. I paid 2 life to Mutagenic Growth it, knowing he was going to Battle Rage me if I did it, so I could cast my 2 Death Shadows the next turn. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. This doesn't even feel like Magic.
Yeah.
So at some point you're gonna have to play the mirror that way, and I don't know what version's even better. So sorry, I don't want to start sounding like Morgan and Jund. So I guess we can move away from these, but it's just interesting to see the differences.
Yeah, I do agree. And watching those mirror matches pseudo mirror matches that you were playing with the other local player, they seemed fairly complex. For this is definitely I feel like Dave said this before, but this is the thinking man's aggressive deck.
It really is. It's just so unintuitive. When you're playing it, and like I said, really, honestly, go watch Brett Nelson versus Miles. Go rewatch that match and just see the lines, the decision trees that have to come. All right, and you're talking about Miles playing a burn deck that had 3 Deflecting Palms on the board. You want to talk about a card that messes up your math? Oh my gosh!
Yeah, Deflecting Bomb's a weird one, just for the sheer fact that it's if you're stopping a double striker, well then first strike, but it's actually better to stop regular damage with it, right?
Yeah, he actually punted that. I think it was game 4.
Yes, correct.
Because he Teamer Battle Raged a 6/6 Death Shadow, knowing that he wouldn't die to it, and yeah, he definitely Deflecting Palmed the first strike damage, which deals 6 back to Brad, which then makes his Death Shadow get +6/+6 for these double strike. So yeah, you played it backwards in a Bid'em, and it's again how if you've not tested that, he'll never make that mistake again.
No,
but if you're not tested that, it doesn't feel like oh yeah, I'm just going to Deflecting Palm this, and you're oh no, that's not how. It was rough.
No, yeah. But it's certainly interesting, and if you are playing this deck, which it is becoming fairly popular, it definitely see if you can have one of your friends, one of your testing partners, sleeve up, possibly the slight variation, or the card for card mirror, and just jam games, because I think there's certainly fun, and there's certainly something you have to be prepared for, I think, going forward.
I guess next we're going to talk. I mean, there's a lot of good names in this top 8. We had Michael Majors, playing Abzan. Eric Hawkins, who Eric's a real nice guy, a pleasure to play against. I was really glad to see. Like I was like, Eric Hawkins, I know that, and then he was on camera. I was like, yeah, all right. So congrats to him. And we'll talk about his standard deck actually here in a minute. But I do want to mention Mr. Tom Ross. Yeah, another invitational, another top 8 for Tom Ross.
Just like the king of invitationals.
But we do want to quickly talk about his dredge deck.
Yeah, I mean, he was the lone dredge player in the top 8, and we had to be fair, I do want to say that we did have 8 different modern lists show up in top 8, which is great. I mean, in modern, in an invitational specifically, you never know what you're going to get.
It's like a box of chocolates.
Yeah, very much so. And because it's standard and modern, you never know what is going to rise to the top, other than good names.
The dough.
Correct. So it was interesting to see that we got so blessed to have a bunch of different decks to take a look at in the top 8.
And honestly, his list is not hugely different, but you do see a move. Only 2 Shriekhorns now, but I thought this was interesting to at least talk about quickly because of he cut as like most of a specific card, a card that I think people were calling for a banning for this last week. I saw on multiple threads, which is Bridge from Below. He's only running 2.
Yeah, if you think Bridge from Below is like the problem in Dredge, I don't think you understand how Dredge works.
And it said he's playing Life from the Loam, which seems like a huge upgrade with how these decks work. And because of that, I think I'd have to go back and look. He might be playing one more land than they were playing before. I can't remember if they were playing 19.
Yeah, you'd have to look back and forth, but
yeah. So nothing too crazy here. He does have a Collective Brutality in the main, and I'm pretty sure after seeing all the work that did in the last Modern Open, it probably was fine to put one in the main.
That card seemed like it was a house, so it's not surprising to see it show up main deck now.
Yeah, so it's interesting to see how this deck keeps going, and to wonder if the way the Dredge works in this format, because the real cards here, it's prized amalgam. Let's be honest, like that's the card that's really making these engines go.
Yeah, I mean,
and giving you the most broken turns.
Yeah, that's the card that definitely pushes over the top. I think you could also make an argument for Faithless Looting as being a card that could potentially be a little bit more problematic than you may think in Modern. It's also one of the cards that fuels the Grishol brand deck, which as of late hasn't really been too much of an issue or a problem, but it is a card that allows that deck to have it is a factor in some of the early turn 2 wins that deck can have for sure.
I just want to take a moment here to talk about how we're mentioning that people have said this, but I think the idea of calling for a modern banning right now is ludicrous. Yeah, I understand. People lost their minds. Brad Nelson had a turn 2 kill on the play.
Through an Inquisition.
Through an Inquisition of Kozilek. I saw it. It was gross. JD and then literally smashed his face into the carpet over the next 3 games like her deck is supposed to do. So the high variance 2-2 kill was measured by the consistency of the Jund deck. And I think that's the thing you have to pay attention to. Yeah, the format's gotten faster recently. It has. And maybe Wizards doesn't like that. But yeah, the Grishol brand deck has not been a problem. And I don't know if you noticed, Dredge wasn't a problem this weekend either. You had 1 copy in the top 8. You had multiple decks packing more hate. And as high five for us, I'm going to say this right now, we called more aggressive decks. Burn showing up. Well, Hexproof in the open. Death Shadow Zoo. Pressure these decks and they collapse.
Yeah, I mean, they if you're just faster than they are, then they can't do anything. They don't have a lot of interaction, and a lot of it's in the sideboard. So if you're just going to take game 1 when they're expecting to take game 1 by their strategy, they're you take that power away from them, and then it's a lot harder for them to have the consistent victories that they're used to. Dredge always functions the same way, whether it's Modern now or whether it's Legacy or Vintage. People forget about Dredge. Dredge wins. People remember, Dredge is a thing. Dredge doesn't win anymore.
Yeah, 1 top 8 out of 8 is perfectly respectable. Same for all these rest of the decks. And good on Tom Ross. You also weigh the fact that there's Dredge again. Honestly, there's Tom Ross again. Yeah. I mean, the guy is just a master, and really, it really takes the stress of these invitationals and just puts it behind him. Mm-hmm. He talks a lot about how he feels like he's misplayed a number of times and he might be playing too sloppy, and he puts that behind him. He's able to focus and really take control of these events. We don't get another token. Sorry. I know people were excited to see if we get a Monarch token, but there's no way we don't.
Yeah, it's got to be an Elf token.
Yeah, there's no way.
Make a 1/1 Elf. It doesn't make any sense for Liam to not do that. I mean, You know what? Sometimes it is good to be king, though. So maybe you just want a monarch token. I can't blame a man for that. So, but I would be surprised if he didn't want to play with his own tokens in his own modern deck. I mean, why not? How cool is that? Like, I'm gonna make this elf, 1/1 elf warrior, and they go, hey, is that you? And you're like, yeah,
I'll cast Liam's Elite.
yeah, pretty much. So good. Oh man. But yeah, like when you look at the 7-1 decks, when you look at the decks that performing the best, in modern, like people at this point in time should be calling for something to get banned and burned. Like there's so many burn lists that show up in the 7-1 decks, and it's like that's the majority of the list. So it's like you can't make an argument for Dredge.
And I think think about that. Like our argument for burn. Like burn was awful for 4 months.
Yeah.
Like. You know what? Again, the format's faster. I get that. Maybe that's an issue. But if the format's too fast, that smells like an unbanning to me than a banning.
Mm-hmm.
Like, then put something in the format to shake it up. And we'll see. So I really hope that people calm down on calling for bannings. I mean, look at how long it took for them to do anything about Amulet Bloom. You know why? Because its results were kind of average for a while. It took them, a year and a half, almost 2 years to ban it. So don't take away Death Shadow after 1 season.
Yeah, it's just like, it's just not a thing.
Don't take away Dredge after 2 events.
Yeah, it's really like it's not a thing, and modern a lot of time is very it runs in cycles, so it's not surprising that we see Burn perform so well. I mean, a lot of people are probably cutting Burn cards for Dredge hate, so it's like, oh well, now I need to cut maybe some of these Dredge cards and then put in some life gain. It's like it's a balancing act.
And to that end, you saw Affinity also have a couple of finishes.
Yeah,
so
because we had to cut back on some other hate. So, like the argument can be made that like we shouldn't have, like, I think the issue is like we have these very powerful decks, and then we have these very powerful sideboard cards that shut down these decks, and we don't have sort of catch-all cards that you can play main deck that help. So the whole like force of will sort of theory, where it's like we don't have anything that can combat these things unless we play these super powerful sideboard cards. So there have these sacrifices that have to be made, basically. And I think that's some of the things that people don't like about modern is just like the sideboard cards are where a lot of your games are won and lost, and people, especially like highly competitive players, like to know they have consistently they are able to consistently win, and you just don't have that in modern. Like you could be playing a deck and just not have cards for it and lose.
I mean, that's fair, but I think that's a different conversation. But I do think
that's kind of
I
off
do think
the beaten
despite
path.
that, you can be consistent in modern. I think a lot of really strong modern players have advocated for that maybe certainly those cards play a factor, but also knowing the format, knowing your deck, and a lot of pros just don't do that when it comes to modern. Mm-hmm. So there's one more modern deck I think we wanted to talk about, which is you have the names.
I have the names. Let me take a look here.
I don't want to mess up his last name.
Is it the top 8 player?
No, it's the Blue Eyed Flash deck. Kurt Spiess?
Yeah, I think it's Kurt Spiess.
Okay, I think it's German. I don't know.
Yes, Kurt. Kurt Spiess. That's what I'm going to go with. If Kurt's got a problem with it, then he can at me on Twitter and give me some.
Did you say he can come at you on Twitter?
He can at me. He can send me a message and give me some phonetical pronunciation of his name, and then we can continue on being correct. But yeah, he was playing a very innovative blue-white flash list, and he has 4 Spellskite, which have to be played the same time you would normally play a creature on your main phases, but then everything else he has can be played anytime he wants. It's much like pizza bagels. He can play spells at any time.
Spells in the morning, spells in the evening, spells at
summertime, and it's summer, so this works. It's pretty good.
Yeah, this deck was really interesting, and you really see the advent of Spellqueller. Really trying to push that card into modern, and I think it's interesting this take on it because that you mentioned the 4 Spellskite, but it's really important because it becomes so hard to interact with him then. In any fashion, your spot removal gets a lot worse, backed up by his own counter magic with a number of he has a negate, a deprive, and spell snares and cryptics. This is sort of a throwback to that the Delver decks of Old Standard, where you could stick like a Restoration Angel and just have enough protection to get all the way through. And it's also backed up by things like having like Celestial Colonnade and 4 Ghost Quarters, and just having more interaction than you might think. And I thought this was a really nifty take on an archetype that's been sort of gone for a long time. Like it made a few waves post standard. You even had a couple like people trying out like the Callblade style for a little while there, like modern Callblade without the good stuff.
Yeah.
And this seems like an interesting take on it. He obviously didn't like break the format or anything this weekend, but I like seeing people push Spellqueller in this format. It's powerful enough.
I do have to mention, I do have to correct myself. I'm sorry. He has Ancestral Visions as a 4-up, so he can't. He has to play those. Those are sorcery still.
Man, you know what card is interesting with Spellqueller? Ancestral Vision. Like you feel really, really bad, but then you get to cast it when it dies. So then you're like, wait, what? Okay, the highest of highs, the lowest of lows.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, any deck that plays Gideon Jura on the sideboard, man. Cool.
And I think we should point out that, like, we talked about these white decks. One of the draws to white right now is like, look, his board is loaded with Supreme Verdicts, Stony Silences, Rest in Pieces, Engineered Explosives. Like, he's just playing all the sweet sideboard cards that white gets access to.
Exactly. So, like, just all the best, the greatest hits, as it were. I mean, it even has like 3 Snapcaster Mage and 3 Rest in Peace. It's like, I wonder how many times that swap happens.
Every time your opponent goes Faithless Looting.
Yeah, pretty much. So I think like this is a pretty innovative list that we don't see very often in Modern, and hey, it could be something to work towards if you want to try something new out in the format and win some games. Play some sweet decks.
Want to talk some standard decks?
Just a couple. Just a light sprinkling of standard. Before we do that, though, do we want to talk about anything about the Modern Open?
If we want to stay on topic, we can do that real quick. So there were a couple lists in the Open that I thought we should also look at. Again, we have different archetypes even showing up there.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the Mardu control deck that took second. We mentioned this because it was a high finisher in the MOCS last week, and it was pretty quick to see this deck come into the format. But this is a non-blue Nahiri deck, so you have 4 Dark Confidant and 1 Emrakul as your creatures.
At any price, man, at any price.
Are you familiar with the Aerosmith staple, Living on the Edge? Sometimes you can't help yourself from falling.
I mean, it's a pretty low... It's a pretty low expectation thing to happen, but when it does happen, you got to be like, well, all right.
you got that good sweat a couple of turns. You're like, but beyond that, it's Liliana, Nahiri, and just great removal spells. Oh, and Lingering Souls.
Yeah, I mean, Lingering Souls had a pretty good weekend, in all honesty. Michael Majors played it in his junk list, and it had even shown up in the 4-color Jund lists that were playing Grimflayer, and so Lingering Souls is kind of making a resurgence there and showing up here. But yeah, I think, like, again, this is something, a different take onto a very powerful strategy. So you have Nahiri Jeskai, and then you have, Jund/Junk, and you're just kind of like, chocolate and peanut buttering them together, basically.
Yeah, I really like these lists. I haven't cast Nahiri in Modern. I continue to be impressed by her, and it always surprises me that these Mardu lists aren't more popular. Obviously, they haven't done great things in the format, which could be the answer to my own question. But these are the kind of decks that, like, these are the cards that people play like in Standard, and then their cards rotate, and this is where you can play them. Like, it really is. Obviously, for Liliana, maybe turning people off. But once again, I call attention to the sideboard. Playing white, get to play Rest in Peace, but also black, playing Kalitas. And we saw Jund playing Kalitas be pretty good. Pretty darn good against these dredge lists. Heck, we were even discussing, we mentioned, Tyler Manti, the local player, playing the Duran deck, that, like, Duran may not be good enough, and you may, in fact, want to be playing Anafenza the Foremost. I'm sorry, Anafenza...
No, that's Anafenza the Foremost.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, you're right, it's Foremost.
It's not the
other Foremost is the one I'm thinking of now. But, those triggers, those, replacement effects for the graveyard are so powerful right now, and the creatures themselves are good. So, it doesn't surprise me now to see this deck being popular, but... I think you're going to see more and more of it. I really do.
Yeah, and a lot of the arguments against this list, it's like, well, you don't get Tarmogoyf and you don't get, Cryptic Command, so that kind of feels awkward, but I think you're in a good spot with what is showing up in, the meta. If the meta shifts, then this deck might, sort of wane in its actual power, but, yeah, I like it. It's good that it's showing up.
Agreed. Another list I had pulled out for us to look at quickly was, we don't have to look too much at the actual list because they don't change that much, but is Green-White Hexproof that we made mention of. A deck that I think Patrick Chapin himself called out as being pretty good against the Dredge strategies that you can get to a certain power and toughness with lifelink on your Hexproof guy that you just have inevitability. It doesn't really matter what they're doing. And you see it top 8 here with a couple of cool tech cards too. It's got a Grifspoon.
Yeah, so Emma Handy was featured on camera playing a very similar list to this.
I'm sorry, this is Anand Khair? That's my guess. Yes. I apologize if I butchered the last name.
Anand Kahar?
That's what I assumed.
Hair, maybe, yeah. But yeah, so Grifspoon is sort of the sweet tech to jump over the ground blockers that you may want to sort of get out of the way. It allows you to be able to kind of push through some damage with your ledge walker creatures, basically, and it's cheap and recurable, which is like the biggest thing that it has going for it, basically. We've seen like Spirit Mantle as we show up as a 3 of being another way that allows your suited up creatures to get through. But I like the Grifspoon just for the sheer fact that it's recurring.
Yeah, absolutely. There's not a lot of matchups where your threats die a ton. That's why you only see one, but that one can be the difference, Mm-hmm. And again, I pointed out one more time, I don't care if you're annoyed yet, white with... Look at the access to the sideboard cards. 3 Stoning Silences, 4 Leyline of Sanctity. You know what I mean? I chose to not play the Rest in Pieces, but played the Grafdigger's Cages instead, which makes sense with the Rancors.
And the
Grifspoon, But in all honesty, and even Gaddock Teague hanging out there. Unfortunately, this did not seem like the weekend that Gaddock Teague was excelling. But Gaddock Teague is the kind of hate card that when it's good, oh my god, is it
it's
good.
backbreaking. When you take a look at Gaddock Teague, that is something that is probably better against the the decks that are leaning heavily on Chord Calling, because it can't play X-Spells, right?
So,
and which Elves was, so that would have been something to see.
And they think Collect Company as well.
Yeah, because it's over.
It's 4 or more.
Yeah, 4 or more. Yeah. So that oddly shuts off some of the more powerful things the Elves deck can do, which is hilarious. But yeah, I think when you break down this deck and really look at it, and you're just well, we'll take away the 4 Horizon Canopies, just remove those from the equation, and really look at building this deck and not having those. So obviously that probably takes away some percentage of your wins, which is unfortunate. Horizon Canopy is a pretty messed up land. It's a green-white land that lets you draw a card. Green-white lands shouldn't let you do that. Just fun fact.
Lands in general
shouldn't let you do that, even at the sacrifice of losing a land.
Yeah, absolutely
not fair. So if you take away those and look at some of the budget options you have for fetch lands, because you don't necessarily need the one Misty Rainforest. You can play Windswept Teeth and Wood of Foothills just fine. Your shock lands aren't going to be that expensive, and Horizon Canopies, I'll tell you this, they are replaceable still. There are other green-white lands you can play comfortably. And when you break it down, this deck pretty cheap.
Affordable.
Pretty cheap. So if you are looking for a deck that is will probably be pretty consistently good for the next few Modern tournaments, and then still a contender on any given weekend, take a look at Green-White Hexproof.
For sure. And then the last deck I want to take a look at real quick here is the 14th place of the Open is Jacob Bao playing Kiki Evolution. Now, Jeff played an Angels version of this list, I think, to a 33rd place finish. And rough. Also, I think he played that in half of the Open as well. And this version, isn't quite doing as many Angel things, but it's interesting to see how there are now 4 copies of Eldritch Evolution, but only 2 copies of Quarter Calling. So you and I don't know if that's better. It's really interesting to see that card sort of pushing out a little bit. And you see a black splash here for things like Orzhov Pontiff, which we're used to, but Siege Rhino and Anafen's the Foremost. I know I don't ever want my opponent to Kiki Jiki a Siege Rhino.
No.
But it's possible in this list, and that sounds pretty sweet. But you also get to Resto it. Everyone always liked Resto Thragtusk. Yeah, did you just get a little sad there? Did that choke you up a little bit? Oh, I know. You want to do it now, don't you? Yeah. Morgan got a little choked up there.
That's dirty. That's a dirty thing you can do. Oof. And you have the Thragtusk in the sideboard too, so you can do both things.
Oh, yeah.
You can do both things. Ooh. Man.
And this, like, the one-ofs here are getting sort of crazy now, but, I mean, Selfless Spirit is here as a one-of. It just... The deck continues to get more and more interesting, and the deck seems to be better when you're not trying to do the crazy things. I think people told Jeff, you should be play Grintilda, and he's like, no, I'm just going to play these good cards and not have to worry about this. Or you play Elishnorn, and it's like, well, you don't have to do that in the main. So it's pretty nifty. So I'm excited to see where they keep pushing these lists and what they can actually do with Eldritch Evolution.
Right, and so I think like the reason that people are likely playing Evolution over Chord, it's like you could probably just take advantage of it earlier, right? Like you can probably just have better acceleration, and you're going to get got by like Remand and stuff like that anyway, and a lot of like certain things. Like obviously, I imagine that the velocity you get from it probably overcomes the like feel bads that happen.
And I think it's important if you notice here that before people were playing 2 to 3 Voice of Resurgence in the Chord list, these are playing 4 and a Kitchen Finks. So there's plenty of options. There's plenty of situations where you're not even 2 for 1ing yourself, or 2 for 2ing, quote unquote, yourself. Like you're sacking a guy but getting a token, which is probably going to be a bigger guy than that now. And I can tell you right now, one of the coolest plays in that format was always to like attack with your elemental tokens and then like Chord for P and Kirinalar to pump it. Well, now you can just sack your Voice to go get P and Kirinalar. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like that's pretty gross. So I think those options, those recurring options, and then say you sack a bunch of guys and then like you sack up to get Revelark. Like that, there's so much synergy there. Like to go like, oh look, here's Revelark now, and it's like, oh, and you have how many things in your graveyard? Oh, well, I sacked all these creatures to Eldritch Evolution, so. So yeah, I think we've seen sort of some of the Chord and I'm saying this even though Elves won the Open, or I'm sorry, the Invitational, but we've seen sort of less. So there's no Abzan Company at the moment. I think a couple months ago you could argue it was the best deck in the format.
Yeah. It was everywhere.
And Kiki Chord itself, like outside of really like Jeff and like I think Ali Andrazi played it once, it's been a few stalwarts trying to like keep it alive, but it also has taken a downturn. So I'm excited to see them continue to push in this space, and hopefully the deck's still good.
Yeah. It would be kind of disappointing to see it kind of leave the format, but I think that when you have things like Death Shadow Zoo and stuff like that, just these very aggressive decks, I think sometimes not being able to block effectively in these decks I think is a huge downside. When people have giant creatures that are like trampling and double striking, and you're just like, well, I'll block with my wall or block my Voice. It's not enough. So I think that's sort of the unfortunate side, but you're not always going to be playing against Death Shadow Zoo, and like these decks are, not a lot of other decks in the format are combating effectively against this. So I like it, and I've always liked the sort of the Kiki Chord list. I think they can do so many like fun things. It's always nice to watch them do insane things and just be like, oh, okay. That's what we're doing.
I think I'm always surprised with some of the cool lines the deck can make. Like you just look at a stack of cards and you're just like, all right, paint me a picture.
No, yeah, I'm gonna get a story from this, so let's see what happens. So yeah, let's go ahead and touch on a few decks from Standard, and I think the first one that we definitely want to talk about is the Eric Hawkins list, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I mean, so we can run down. We had 3 copies of Bant. We had 2 copies of Bant Company, 1 Bant Humans. This is the Invitational top 8 again. A Teamer Emerge. I'm sorry, 3 copies of Bant Company and 1 Bant Humans. Tom Ross with his old standby mono white humans. The guy can just take anything to the top 8 of an Invitational, and a Thermal Alchemist deck. But Eric Hawkins really brought out the interesting one with Black Blue Zombies, which we was the Sam Black deck at the Pro Tour that was supposed to be the Bant Company killer, and ended up not being great for that metagame. And ended up being pretty good for this one. Mm-hmm. Again, we said how many Bant Company lists were in those 7-1 lists or better. So if I would be totally happy to play a deck that had a good matchup against it, and this deck is spicy. Yeah,
and apparently Eric Hawkins went 5-0-2 on the day, so still undefeated, but the math doesn't work out.
5-1-2 then.
Maybe 5-1-2. Maybe that's what it was.
Standard was the last one, right?
Yeah.
So he was able to draw at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So
so not quite good enough to show up on the 7-1, but still had like the same points as 7-1 or something really like that.
Close, yeah,
there was like some weirdness that basically happened. So, but this list is exactly what you had seen from those blue black lists, and it's still an option, especially with Bant Company being seemingly more and more of the deck that people are drawn to playing. This list is going to show up and combat it. I mean, obviously you run the risk of running into decks that you just can't beat, but if you want to play something fun and is still viable in a heavy Bant Company tournament, I'd give this a shot.
Yeah, just the cool interactions you get between Haunted Dead and Jace Vryn's Prodigy and Voldaren Pariah, and being able to bring out Descended Mindbender super early, which is really devastating. Not just for Bant Company opponents, but like a lot of these Emerge and even Delirium decks. Like you're just like, okay, cool, hit your removal spell, hit your your Fatty that was going to come down. And it can be, they may not have enough time to recover while you're attacking them for 5+ every turn.
Yeah, I mean, and so what rotates out of this deck?
What?
Jace.
Wow.
That's it. Not even lands. You still have all of your lands, which is crazy to think about. Your mana base can only get better, if anything. But Jace is the only thing that rotates.
Duress, I guess?
Yeah, theoretically.
Yeah, I mean, it could always, Duress could always just be there.
Duress just goes.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Now, again, this is a deck that's designed to beat Bant Company, so it will depend on the format, but the cards and the interactions are still pretty solid. So
yeah, I mean,
they're looking out.
It's still a very powerful place to start at a, two set rotational, a two sets rotating out basically. So, and Dark Salvation. No. I'm thinking of Dark Petition.
Yep.
Stupid cards with similar endings and beginnings. Just the middle that's different. No, but yeah, Dark Salvation will still be in standard. Yes, correct. So, it's interesting to take note of. It may not be good enough, but it's a good thing to consider.
One other thing about his deck, he has no red mana.
Oh, he still has Kozilek's Return.
You have 3 Kozilek's Returns in the sideboard.
You just toss those.
And 2 Wretched Gryphs. Yeah, you just discard them, and then you can also play the Emerge deck game. And I think that's also pretty insane.
Yeah.
So,
certainly a interesting deck. And again, I think it'd be better for bigger tournaments rather than your smaller tournaments.
Yeah, it's probably true.
So, but still cool to see it do well and still have a good enough record to propel someone to the top 8 of the Invitational, which is very important. You want to talk about
one more because this list did go 8-0 in standard, so I think it's what we're talking about, and that is Shaheen Sarani's Esper Control. Which I know your jaw. We will pause there for a second. Your jaw just dropped to the floor. Shaheen Sarani played Esper. I wish the guy would just stick to what he knows.
Next thing we're going to tell you is that the sky is blue and the grass is green, and swamps
produce black mana.
Correct. But yeah, this is definitely an interesting list, to say the least. This is actually the first time that I've taken a look at it in all of its glory, and boy howdy, wow. This is a lot of different things, and this is why I can't ever play Control. But I mean, so he has a lot of Planeswalkers. He has 6, so he has 1 Liliana, 2 Narset. Because man, we need. Remember that card was $50.
She's still here
for no reason. Oh gosh, 1 of Nixilis and 2 Sorin, and I think a lot of people were fairly high on Sorin. I know that in a lot of the pre-game, Cedric was or one of the commentators was saying man, a lot of the black-white decks power comes from a resolved Sorin, and it's just you resolve that card and it just feels so hard to win after that. And then we have 5 creatures. Technically, we have 4 Jace Vryn's Prodigy, technically a creature, and then 1 Emrakul, the Promised End. She's getting in on some action there, and then the rest are just a whole litany of spells.
So the one thing I do want to mention here, 4 copies of Oath of Jace with 6 Planeswalkers plus 4 Jace Vryn's Prodigy. So one of the few decks we've seen in the format that's actually designed to take advantage of the scry.
Yeah, a whole lot of scrying going on.
And that's relevant. I for all of you that played with Thassa when she was in Standard, scrying 1 every upkeep is great,
played against Lhasa at the PPZ.
Yeah, there you go.
PPTQ. Still pretty good.
So try having two planeswalkers in play and also getting to fixture draw step while having a board presence already. I mean, that's it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, so you have the Oath of Jace card draw. You have Dark Petitions in the main deck. So that's why you can afford to play all of the one-ups that he's playing. We see one Anguished Unmaking, one Silumgar's Command, one Ultimate Price, one Coax from the Blind Eternities, one Descend Upon the Sinful, and one Ruinous Path. So,
and I think Descend Upon the Sinful is the card he said was the best for him all day in the Swiss because
it's not shocking.
Why wouldn't it be? I mean, the exile clause in that is so important, and it's also important because it's the kind of card that if you know you're about to get Emerald, you can just keep it in your hand. They can't do anything about it. They take your turn and they can cast it. Or they can just let you cast it the next turn, but there's no way for them to play around, fully getting rid of your Emrakul.
Yeah,
and I think that's important. I really like his Coax, by the way. So he has one Emrakul in the main, but one on the sideboard. So if they were to infinite obliterate him, it wouldn't end the fun.
It would not matter.
And I also really like this. So the first thing I saw the Narsets, then I saw the Coax, and I was like, he better have a second Eldrazi in the sideboard. Fathom Feeder as a one-up on the board, just in case you rebound the Coax. Okay,
yeah, you need to have that value. You gotta find it somewhere, man. But that's great. Fathom Feeder, little Eldrazi that could.
Yeah, so I would. This deck looks impossibly difficult to pilot, and not something I'm just not interested in even looking at with 1 month left in the format.
Not my cup of tea. You don't want to buy to Narset and strap this baby on.
That card's expensive.
Is it still?
I want to say it's close to 20. Let's see here. Narset is.
It's got to be $7.
Oh my god, it's $6.99. Yeah. You lost the prices right.
Oh, I went over.
I thought it was still $10 because I sold one for 8 or 9 buy list last month.
Oh wow!
So
look at you, Mister. I got insane value on buy list in my 9 Narset.
But yeah, so if you were looking for that Esper control deck and that real last hurrah in this format with your Jace Vryn's Prodigy. Here it is.
There you go. Just have fun. And make sure your opponents don't have any fun, though.
Actual zero.
In all honesty, you should probably just be playing the Cat Pack deck, because, yeah. I mean, it's kind of doing the same thing, but you get to kill people with dark...
you get adorable cats.
Yeah, exactly. You get to kill people with Demonic Pact. Who doesn't like doing that?
Unfortunately, not going to highlight any lists from the Classic. It was almost all company, and then there were some good names. Don't get me wrong. When Seth Manfield is your 14th place finisher in your Classic event, you've run a good weekend. Yeah. But you were really scraping the bottom of the barrel here for Standard.
It's pretty rough, and we can only talk about Band Company so much. And we know that I'm sure that our listeners are very thrilled by us saying Band Company over and over again. And I do want to say that Band Company did not win the tournament. It was actually won by Jared Toe, playing Black Green Delirium. So we do have options still. So I do encourage you to take a look at that list. And then the two other non-Band Company lists, which were Jim Davis playing Sultai Delirium, and then Connor Bryant playing Teamer Emerge. So we do have some fairly successful decks that are playing different and not joining the in crowd, as it were. And I would encourage you to take a look at those, but nothing new or really innovative that we feel that we need to speak upon for this Classic.
Yeah, and then as far we won't really touch here on Legacy too much. I do want to say it's really funny though. Manaless Dredge almost won the Legacy Classic.
It would have been fitting. People were so focused on modern Dredge, they were like, oh, it's actually way better in Legacy. They actually got that real Dredge. So yeah, gotta watch out for both, man. It's everywhere. I do want to give a shout out to Carlos Eldrazi being in 4th and 8th place. Shout out to Carlos Eldrazi. I'm gotta give a shout out to my more powerful Legacy brethren playing the actual broken version of the deck. So pretty sweet to see. But I mean, that's about it for competitive as far as that goes. I mean, we had a pretty good weekend. Now. So we have GP Indy, coming up. Neither of us are going, unfortunately. Cards didn't sort of, break that way, and it's really expensive. And if we could like guarantee a win, then yeah, let's sign us up. But
it's just we've got a number of events early in September that we are locked in for. Most of them involving some sweet team travels.
Exactly.
That it just felt like it was better bang for our buck. But hopefully, a number of you are going and do well.
Yeah. So based on what we have from the Invitational, give me like 3 decks that you should probably prepare for.
It's a good question. I would Dredge is still there. It still did well this weekend, showing up in top 8 in both the Open and the Invitational. So it's definitely not wrong to play a couple extra hate cards for that. I would also look at playing some hate cards for Burn. It seems to be back, and I will say that one does actually depend on how many buys you have. If you're walking into the tournament with no buys, prepare for Burn. If you have 2 buys, you might be able to ignore it and hope to dodge it for a few rounds. And then beyond that, I would prepare for Jund. It doesn't sound like the flashy, spicy choice, but you're going to a big Open. It's the most played or one of the most popular decks in Modern. It's very consistent at what it does, and if you think you're just going to like, all right, well, I'm going to play this and not worry about Jund at all, like you're going to get Tarmogoyfed and you're going to be sad. So those are the 3 I'd pay attention to. With a honorable mention to Affinity. What's up, robots?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are pretty solid choices. So I would say keep hating on Dredge. Deck is not. We haven't quite hit that critical point where it's like meh. And I do like Burn as well, just because of its performance. I feel like you might be able to skip out on that one for like one more tournament. And I feel like where it's not necessarily a deck, but which you should try to fit into your deck somehow is a Sweeper of some persuasion, because I feel like Sweepers are still pretty okay against Burn. They're not the best. They're not ideal. Depends on their draw. But with Elves winning, I can see a lot of people like wanting to try to push that.
I could agree with that. A card that I think is also well positioned this weekend though is Blood Moon.
Yeah.
Even some of these more aggressive decks, especially like Death Shadow, kind of a combo deck. And if you can land, there are decks that can pump out a turn 2 Blood Moon pretty consistently. Pons is one of them. The Grishelbrand deck can do it. Some of the other versions of Eldrazi can do it, though it's awkward to Blood Moon yourself in that deck. But there are decks you could just decide that you want to play a turn 2 Blood Moon if you want to. Hilariously, Scred Red can do it pretty consistently and play also Chalice if they want to. And,
oh yeah.
That card seems pretty well positioned right now. Pretty good against Jund. Pretty good against Dredge. Pretty good against Affinity. Yeah, pretty interesting.
And also to go along with sort of the Sweeper, and whether it's like an Infest variant, Anger of the Gods, something like that. But if Jund is going to be popular, then Junk should be popular, because that's sort of the natural mirror breaker, basically, because you get Lingering Souls. So you want to have a good way to combat that in some facet. Now you're also playing a bunch of Graveyard Hate, which is kind of coincidentally hits half of Lingering Souls. So
that's why Spellbomb's still good.
Oh yeah, for sure. So I really feel like you need something to help you out in that particular matchup. And then Death Shadow. Death Shadow is just going to be there. It's a very powerful deck. It it did have sort of a big moment from the Invitational where it did get that turn 2 kill through Inquisition, and people take away big moments. Whether what happens in the rest of the match may not be as relevant as what happened in that particular game. So I really feel like people are going to be pushing that deck now. I don't know how you do it. I mean, we talked about Chalice, but I mean, you can't just put Chalice of the Void into everything.
You can.
Okay.
Doesn't make it good, but
theoretically, yes, it is a colorless artifact. You can put it in everything, but sometimes your deck just don't work when you do that. So, I think like that could find a way to make your deck better versus that deck, and I think you'll have a little bit more success in your a GP Indianapolis tournament. So over the weekend we do have a GP Lily. It's in France. I can't.
GP Lille.
GP Lille. And then GP Guangzhou. which is in
They're all modern. All modern.
Oh yes,
Sweet modern weekend.
They've been doing their best to do sort of unified weekends. Do we have any coverage? For
I just saw to that. I didn't check when I looked it up.
All right, well,
I can look. If I had to guess if anyone was going to have coverage, I would guess Indy, but
yeah.
it could be Lil.
It could be. So we also have the second week of our regional PTQs as well. So our second weekend. So if you are going to be attending, your RPTQ for this season, good luck to you. You're an At Your End Step fan, and we want you to be successful, and we want you to win and get queued. So go ahead and take those down, and then give a shout out to At Your End Step in your sweet tweets, and say that we helped you, and it will be really, really good, and people will start to listen to us. I mean, more people will start to listen to us. People do currently listen to us, and that's why we keep doing this. We want more because we're greedy, and we desperately need your approval for most everything. So that's about it. I'm really just stalling until you figure out if there's coverage or not.
All right, no, I'm not seeing anything.
Okay, well, whatever. There's no coverage, and we'll just be called liars, and that's fine with me. We've lied about other things about this podcast. Dave's actually here. No, he's not. I'm just kidding. I don't want you to think that. But yeah, I believe that's going to be everything for this week of At Your End Step. So while you're on the internet, please feel free to drop us a line. We have a Twitter. It's @YourEndStep. Pretty clever, we know. We also have a Facebook. You can do a quick search for At Your End Step on Facebook, and while you're on there, do a quick search for Comic Town Gaming Center to catch up on all of Comic Town's news. Also, you can find us on iTunes, so feel free to download us there, leave us a review. That really helps us out. We are also on the Google Music app as well in the podcast section. So if you have an Android phone, that's a very easy way for us to get our show to you. We also are on MTG Cast. That's a great network for a whole litany of MTG podcasts. So definitely go over there, find your new favorite show, and that's what we always suggest you to do, because a lot of people are just like us and doing this as something that's very casual, and we really enjoy it. So we really want people to be able to still have a platform for them to do that. And then while you're there, go ahead and if you have the time, throw them a buck or two.
Confirming, no video coverage. Now maybe this isn't showing, like maybe some independent company is going to do the European GP. Sometimes that happens, but no.
Well, that is quite unfortunate, but not the end of the world. Go have a good time, go to GPND, and don't worry about coverage, and just play some matches of Magic, and just be real casual about it. Be real cool.
And have the most incredible run of your life, knowing that you have a chance at like Magic stardom, and then recognize that no one ever saw it because there's no coverage, and you are at a disadvantage compared to other players who had similar runs.
I mean, if you want to live in that insanity, that's fine. But
I'm just saying it's a legitimate thing. But it's also frustrating that.
But your picture will be on the front page.
Wow. Oh, but the talkies. I need the talkies.
Now I just imagine like coverage with like pictures of people, like moving images of people playing Magic, and then like interstitials of like them the words on like the
it's like
the black
silent movie area,
like
top decks, and it's just like you see someone get really surprised, and it's just like a black screen comes up and says "Crack-a-Jack."
Well, I'll be. Oh man, I want silent film Magic to be a thing now.
We can do this. I mean, there's that's like an easy filter on any like video software.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to put that much time and effort.
Oh my god, we got a bunch of bowler hats.
There's a bunch of fake mustaches. This is great. Oh man, we need Dave to like ground us
old-timey Magic
to the floor, because we're just like floating away in our balloon house over here.
So some people want to play 93, 94 Magic.
Yeah, we want to
play old-timey Magic.
We want to play like 1930, 1940 Magic. Can we do that? I don't understand that Magic was not around.
During the Great Depression, Magic cards were made out of leaves.
They were plentiful and free.
We wrote them ourselves. If you want a lightning bolt, you took your umbrella out into the fields.
And you found one. I tell you what, it did a lot more than 3 damage, though.
You were quite the sorcerer.
All right, well, I do believe that is going to do us for this week's episode of At Your End Step. We definitely appreciate you coming and giving us a listen, and we will catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.